up of about 40 centers at research institutions all over the United States, and all of the scientists participating in this panel today, myself included, are based at population research centers that are members of the APC. We also want to mention that the research that you're going to see and hear about, and our research in general, relies on funding from the scientific research agencies, especially the National Institutes of Health, and in this case, the National Institute of Aging and the National Science Foundation in particular, to support the research that we do. Now, what we're going to talk about today really highlights that integral role that federal funding has played in supporting our collection of data and information so that we can document the story of the baby boom and how we've come to this point. And it's very timely, as you all know, as being important for contemporary policy issues that come up. Looking at the baby boom aging really presents challenges, but it also presents opportunities. And we will talk about issues and trends that offer both those challenges and opportunities today. The baby boom generation was born after World War II, starting in 1946 and going all the way through 1964, with some of the highest number of births that they had ever seen. And since the baby boom came to be, they have been a fixture or a fascination or a fixation of our culture in the United States for their whole lives, really. When they were young, they were the youthquake that was threatening to upend society somehow. Then they moved into midlife and they swelled the labor force. Every milestone birthday that the baby boomers have had has been documented in the media and speculated about in terms of how they were going to affect society at different stages in their lives. Now, as we look forward a few years, the last of the baby boomers are going to be turning 65, and we think we know the baby boomers, we've known them for all of their lives, but do we really know them? Who are they really? What are the social and economic implications as the baby boomers become our elders? So in order to answer some of these questions, we have very distinguished population scientists with us today, and they are Dr. Linda Jacobson of the Population Reference Bureau, Dr. Lisa Berkman of Harvard University, Dr. Yifan Lin of Bowling Green State University. Before I turn the podium over to Dr. Jacobson, I just want to mention a couple of things. One is that most of you here have gotten packets with some of the information about the speakers and their biographies. These will also be posted online at the PAA website, and if you RSVP'd, you'll get a link to that, as well as a recording of today's event, should you want to watch it again. So the speakers also are speaking from their own positions, and what they say reflects their own position, not the positions taken by the Population Association of America or the Association of Population Centers. I'm going to turn it over. Each speaker will speak for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to come back on as your moderator, sum things up, and also open the floor to questions. So I know some of you posted questions online when you were registering, and we hope that you'll come up and ask us those questions and start a robust discussion. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn the platform over to Dr. Jacobson.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Trying to get the mic. Is that good? Okay, great. So as Dr. Agree just noted, we all think we know the baby boomers, but popular beliefs are not always accurate. And that's why we're beginning today with a demographic overview of the baby boom generation to set the record straight. Although baby boomers may have been the largest generation for decades, that is no longer true. As you can see circled in red, there are nearly 69 million baby boomers between the ages of 58 and 76. They are outnumbered by the Gen Xers, ages 41 to 57, millennials, ages 25 to 40, and despite declining fertility rates in the US, they are even outnumbered by children under age 18. However, boomers do still significantly outnumber the pre-boomer generations born before 1946. Compare 69 million boomers with only 19 million pre-boomers ages 77 and older in the bottom two bars combined. So clearly, boomers will still have a big impact on the oldest age groups as they move into them. Now, some people assume that almost all of the baby boomers have already reached retirement age. But that is not the case. The pie chart on the left shows that 43% of boomers were still under age 65 in 2022. That's the slice in green. The graph on the right shows baby boomers as a share of different age groups in 2022, those are the blue bars, and projected to 2030, the green bars. While there's a tendency to treat the entire age group 65 plus as being synonymous with the baby boomers, in fact, boomers make up only 67% of the total population ages 65 plus today. Although this share is projected to rise to 88% by 2030, when the last of the boomers turn 65. While boomers are only 29% of the population ages 75 to 84 today, they are projected to be 100% of this age group by 2030. Also note that no boomers are ages 85 and older today, and none will have reached this age group by 2030 either. So where do baby boomers live in the United States right now? This map shows where boomers are most concentrated as a share of the total county population. The share is one indicator of the boomers' potential impact on a county's economy and resources. There are more than 1,100 counties where boomers make up 20% or more of the population, and they are found throughout the United States. These are the counties in light and dark blue. While it is true that the county with the highest concentration of boomers at 38% is in Florida, as you might expect, that's Sumter County, circled in red, the rest of the counties in the top 10 for boomer concentration are scattered across the country from Washington to South Carolina, and they're also circled in red on the map. Boomers are 1/3 or more of the population in these counties. Some of the counties with the highest concentrations of boomers have small populations and represent popular retirement destinations or more rural places where boomers have aged in place. These data show that both boomer men and women have completed higher levels of education than pre-boomers born before 1946. The graph for men on the left indicates that pre-boomers, that's the light blue bars, were less likely to finish high school than both younger boomers in the dark blue bars and older boomers in the green bars. There are increases in the share of boomer men who completed some college or an associate's degree compared with older pre-boomer cohorts. But the share of men completing a bachelor's degree or more is only slightly higher among older boomers than pre-boomers. The graph for women on the right also shows that pre-boomers were less likely to finish high school than boomers. In contrast to men, the shares of both younger and older boomer women with a bachelor's degree or more are considerably higher than those of pre-boomer women, 31% and 30% compared with only 22% for the older cohorts. In terms of health status, older boomers ages 65 to 74 do report fewer disabilities than adults ages 75 and older. As you can see here, only 13% have one or more disabilities compared with 25% among those ages 75 and older. However, the opposite is the case for levels of obesity. About 1/3 of older boomers are obese compared with only 1/4 of those ages 75 and above. And this trend is concerning because higher levels of obesity among older boomers may lead to poorer health outcomes as they move into the oldest age groups. About 1/5 of both older boomers and adults ages 75 and older have been diagnosed with diabetes. This slide illustrates the fact that boomers are not one monolithic group. There are important differences in characteristics between younger and older boomers, as well as between men and women. Not surprisingly, employment rates are still high among boomers under age 65. Although employment rates do drop sharply among boomers over age 65, nearly 3 in 10 men and 1 in 5 women ages 65 to 75 are still employed. In a few minutes, Dr. Berkman will be describing how employment rates have been changing over time for different age groups and why that matters. Finally, the bars on the far right show that employment rates are very low, among both pre-boomer men and pre-boomer women ages 76 and older. Another important distinction between older generations, including baby boomers, and younger generations is racial and ethnic diversity. The dark blue bars on the bottom show that 4/5 of pre-boomers, 3/4 of older boomers, and 71% of younger boomers are non-Hispanic white, compared with only 54% of those under age 24. Similarly, the share who are Hispanic jumps from only 7 to 8% among boomers to nearly 20% among those under age 24. With rising rates of interracial marriage, the share who identify with 2 or more races, those are shaded in light blue at the top of the bars, has reached 7% among the youngest age group. So why are these differences in racial and ethnic composition important? Because even though boomers do have higher levels of economic well-being than older generations, there are still substantial differences in poverty and income status between whites in the dark blue bars and blacks in the green bars and Latinos in the light blue bars. These gaps exist among both boomers, the 3 bars on the left, and pre-boomers, the 3 bar graphs on the right. In both age groups, there are much higher shares of both blacks and Latinos with family incomes below the poverty level. Blacks and Latinos in both age groups are also more likely than whites to be classified as low income, that is, having family incomes between 100% and 200% of the poverty threshold. Finally, a much higher share of whites than blacks and Latinos have family incomes that are 5 times the poverty level or more. And this gap is largest among boomers in the graph on the left, 42% versus 23% and 24%. Another common misconception about those ages 65 and older is that a majority live in group quarters such as nursing homes. While this share does reach 5% among those over age 75, only 1% of both younger and older boomers live in group quarters. Instead, 3/5 of boomers live in married couple households, and 5% of boomers under age 65 are cohabiting. Among boomers over age 65 and pre-boomers over 75, women are much more likely to live alone than men. In fact, nearly 1/4 of women over age 75 live alone, compared with only 9% of men. At the bottom of the graph, you see that women in all 3 age groups are more likely than men to head households without spouses or partners and with relatives or non-relatives. And in a few minutes, Dr. Lin will be describing how changes in the level and timing of divorce rates among boomers have contributed to today's distribution of living arrangements. And finally, although baby boomers are often characterized as technology averse, in fact, almost 3/4 of boomers under age 65 have high-speed or broadband internet connections at home. 85% have at least one computer, such as a desktop, laptop, or tablet at home, and 9 in 10 have smartphones. Although the shares with broadband computers and smartphones are slightly lower among older boomers, they are still much higher than those among pre-boomers ages 76 and older. The lower shares of boomers with high-speed internet at home may be due in part to the lack of infrastructure in some of the more rural areas where boomers have aged in place. And now, with that demographic overview for context, I will turn it over to Dr. Berkman.
Great, thanks so much, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to tell you a story that actually is surprising to me. It's not what I thought would be the way things go. And it's about working longer, America's aging workforce, and baby boomers. About a year ago, actually, we wrote a book called Overtime on America's aging workforce and the future of working longer. It was predicated on a decade-long experience that I had with the Sloan Foundation on thinking about how to get Americans to work longer and how to increase Social Security ages of retirement. And for almost all of the time, we sat there and thought, okay, our problem is to get Americans to work longer, retirement. That would save the Social Security system. It would make Americans happier and somewhat richer. And lo and behold, what we found was really surprising. So that's what I'm going to tell you. So the American proposition assumes that there are lots of things that will continue, which are really true. Better health than 50 years ago. Baby boomers have much better health than their cohorts before. They have much more education, enabling them to stay in the workforce at different jobs. And overall, during this time, there's been less physically demanding work. However, these averages, as much as the mean just obscures all the distribution, actually don't show us the kinds of things that turn out to be terrible and have major consequences. First of all, health and longevity has major inequalities in health. As a matter of fact, the inequalities that we see by education, by occupational status, by racial and ethnic group are far more compelling, probably, than actually the cohort differences that have come out. The second thing is that family caregiving responsibilities are huge. And as women have joined the workforce, of course, this has become a more complex. Job quality and stability has really changed. Once very secure jobs that people assumed they would stay in forever are no longer something they can account on. There's huge variation in local labor markets where, in some cases, labor markets are really poor and precarious work is very common. And there's age discrimination and lack of worker voice. And of course, we've all had economic and unexpected shocks. I would say not only economic, COVID is probably the best example we have of supreme shocks. And this is in the context in the United States of a lot of rising economic inequality and inadequate retirement savings systems outside of Social Security. So very few Americans have adequate savings outside of Social Security. And Social Security is not the save-all, which we can come back to. And there's often been lack of an effective federal response. So who's excluded from the working longer conversation? This is actually the thing that was the aha moment for me. So for a long time, we just looked at the employment statistics. Most of us all look at the employment statistics. However, people out of the labor force by the late 50s are invisible in this working longer population. Working longer actually starts younger than we do. About 20% of men, 30% of women are not employed by 55. Disproportionately, people with lower levels of education are employed. And employment rates fall sharply for people 50 to 60, which I'm going to show you now. So red bars here show 50 to 60. These are cohort trends, so the green ones are 30s. Those are born in 1960s. And you can see that virtually every cohort, the change that happens is enormous. This is for men. This is for women, which of course is very different because women weren't so much in the labor force in the 30s, but they are now, including rising numbers. But still you see these enormous trends of drop-off between 50 and 60. So asking Americans to go from 67 to 68, or 68 to 69 when they're no longer working at 60 is a big ask. Also, less educated groups start from a lower base, but employment rates fall rapidly among all groups, about 20 percentage points for people between 50 and 60. So the green lines again at the top are college grads. The blue lines are less than high school. You can see really dramatic things like for men with less than high school, say it's about 70% when they're 50, but drops to like low, mid-50s maybe by then. And for women, you see the same kind of drop-off and the same disparities. So this educational differential makes it really hard to think about a solution that will fit everybody. As a matter of fact, I think our recommendation is that working longer is a heterogeneous proposition. It's going to require a lot of solutions. And here's the other fact that actually surprised us a lot. These data are from the Health and Retirement Survey. Only about half of older US adults were actually steadily employed through their 50s. So the dark blue bar shows that 52% of people were steadily employed, but 34% were actually already in intermittent work, coming in and out. And there's a lot of data, probably you're familiar with it, that people, once they're out of work at older ages, only find lower wage jobs to replace it and actually have much harder times finding employment. And 15% of people were never employed. So what does that mean in terms of your odds of working when you're 60? So if you were steadily employed all through your 50s, you actually have pretty good odds of working in your 60s. So that's the 80% dark green number. So, that's the scenario, honestly, we'd like everybody to have, right? That we'd like to get people to have steady work through their 50s so that by the time they get to their 60s, they can still do that. And 35% had intermittent 35% of those who had intermittent employment could be working in their 60s. So what's the solution? And I would say we only have scratched the surface on the solution, but I want to show them because you're all the policy folks. So here, one problem and one solution is that we have to create good jobs. And this is a private and public sector responsibility. We can't ask people to keep working unless there are jobs that are good enough for people to keep working. So things like fair pay, benefits, safe working conditions, all those things are really fundamental and basic. But what we've discovered is just like for decades and decades, the physical environment was really toxic in many workplaces and it required fixing. Today our social environment has toxic elements that drive people out of the workforce and make it hard for them. And the three elements that we've focused on are control at work, excessive work demands, and poor social relationships. And I would also include discrimination in this social relationship category. So we need to work. If you want people to have a better retirement and work longer, they have to be working at jobs that are sustainable and secure and good through their 50s. Then when it comes to retirement policies, again, I think here you're probably all more expert and we don't actually have a set of refined policy statements. But one thing is that we certainly need to put Social Security on a sustainable financial footing. Often this only solution that we considered at Sloan forever was having people work longer. But there is another solution, right? And the other solution is by increasing revenues through taxation, by increasing the cap, which people are contributing, and other kinds of things. So working longer is not the only way to get sustainable Social Security. We also could think about creating a universal, automatic, and portable retirement savings plan. Lots of people are thinking about this. Social Security was never supposed to be the be-all and all. Third, early interventions to help injured or ill workers remain attached to the workforce. So one of the things that happens now is that something happens to somebody in the workforce and they drop out, and it's really hard that the workforce is not set up to accommodate people who have a disability or have a long-term illness. COVID, again, is like the perfect example of having COVID and then trying to return. And finally, to also speed along the reliability of Social Security, disability insurance, and update supplemental security income. So overall, what we say is retirement policy and labor force policy are flip sides of the same coin. Working longer is an important but incomplete response to population aging. Social and economic inequalities put working longer in jeopardy for many older Americans. Robust retirement and disability policies are essential, but working longer policies must also be supported by good jobs. Thank you. And now we turn to Professor Witt. And we keep this up, right?
Thank you, Dr. Bergman. It's my pleasure to be here to share my research on great divorce in the United States. So on June 1st, 2010, Al Gore, former vice president, and his wife, both early boomers, announced their separation after 40 years of marriage. I had a hallway conversation with my colleague, Dr. Susan Braun. We were intrigued by the news because until then, most scholars believe that older people don't get divorced. So is the divorce split a real phenomenon or just something the celebrity do? So we are really interested and we start to study this phenomenon. In the following slides, I will go to use the term great divorce to refer to divorce after age 50. So first, let's look at the great divorce trend. By combining data from the Vital Statistics and American Community Survey, we were able to calculate great divorce rate over time. The gold line indicates the overall divorce rate. The blue line indicates divorce rate after age 50. This graph shows that the great divorce rate doubled between 1990 and 2010, from 5 to 10 people got getting divorced per 1,000 married individuals. At the same time, the overall divorce rate in the United States remained about the same at 19. So since 1910, we heard a lot of boomers also getting divorced, right? Not only the early boomer, but also late boomers, including Jeff Bezos, Sarah Palin, and Bill Gates. So you may wonder what happened to the great divorce rate since 2010. Since 2010, the great divorce rate remained about the same, at about 10 divorced person per 1,000 married individuals. However, the overall divorce rate declines during this period from 18 to 13 persons per 1,000 married individuals. Another way we can look at this, we can zoom in to think about great divorce rate, look at the divorce rate by age group. The line, the gold line indicates the divorce rate in 1990. The blue line indicates the divorce rate in 2021. So you can see that for those people between age 15 and 44, the divorce rate declines between 1990 and 2021. In contrast, for those people over age 45, divorce rate increased. The early boomers were in 2021, the early boomers were in the age category 55 to 64. The early boomer were in the age category 65 plus. The late boomer were in the age category 55 to 64. So you can see that between 1990 and 2021, the great divorce rate actually doubled during this period, and the great divorce rate for age 65 plus actually tripled. So another way we can look at this great divorce phenomena is to look at the share of all divorces that occur to people over age 50. So the graph on the left that shows the share of all divorces to people over age 50 that indicate by blue in 1990. So in 1990, about 8% of divorces that occur to people over age 50. So in 1990, it's reasonable to conclude that older people don't get divorced. But it's very different in 2021. That show the graph on the right. So the share is about 2 in 5. So when 38% of the divorces occur to people over age 50, we can no longer ignore great divorce. So doubling of great divorce also indicates an increase in the number of people who divorce after age 50. So in 1990s, about 200,000 people get divorced after 50. But in 2021, the number is near 700,000. And of them, about 53 were boomers. So what are the consequences of the great divorce? First, let's look at the standard of living. So this slide shows the median standard of living before and after divorce. The gold bar indicates before divorce. The blue bar indicates after divorce. And the women's on the left and men's on the right. So from this slide, you can see that women experience about 41% decline in standard of living following the great divorce, from 3.8 to 2.1. For men, the decline is about 21%, from 4.1 to 3.2. I forgot to mention that the standard of living is captured by income to needs ratio. So now let's turn to the median wealth. This is the median wealth before and after great divorce. And for both men and women, the wealth declined about 50%. And this is kind of expected, right? Because most of the couples, they divide their assets 50-50 after divorce. Next, I want to show the number of depressive symptoms before and after divorce. The gray vertical bar indicates the time of the great divorce. And this slide shows that the depressive symptoms increase immediately follow great divorce. After divorce, depressive symptoms dissipated and gradually level off. I didn't show that in this graph, but based on our calculation, it took about 4 years for divorced individuals to return to the pre-dissolution level of depressive symptoms. And prior research showed that it usually takes about 1 to 2 years for younger people to recover on average. So this longer time period to recover is a protracted process for older people. It takes older people a longer time to recover compared to younger adults. Finally, I want to show that the reparenting after great divorce. Again, the graph on the left show for women and men is on the right of the graph. This graph show that about 12% of women are remarried and 10% of women form a cohabitation union within 10 years after divorce. However, there's about 78% of women remain single after divorce. Men are more likely to repartner compared to women. However, you can still see about 63% of men remain single after divorce. So the finding from previous slide shows that great divorce has a significant impact on older adults. So there might be some possible policy implications. First, it takes about 4 years for a great divorce individual to return to the pre-dissolution level of depressive symptoms. So maybe we need some support group for older adults who experience great divorce, an education program for their family and friends to help them to speed up the recovery process. Second, many older adults experience financial loss associated with divorce, particularly for women. And compared to younger adults, older adults have a fewer years of life, working life left to recoup the financial losses. So Dr. Bergman's policy implication provide a very important insight on how to help older adults regain the financial security. Finally, I show that most older adults do not repartner after great divorce, meaning that they cannot count on their spouses or partners for care. So these older adults may need help to mobilize their adult children, their family member, their friends, or social service agencies to get the help they need. To conclude, my research shows that the doubling of great divorce is in accordance with the aging of the baby boom generation. However, we don't know whether or not this great divorce phenomena will continue when younger birth cohort enter the old age. To answer this question, we need the national data, national studies to follow the U.S. population over time. The more we learn about this phenomena, the better we are able to design policy and social services to provide help to those people who experience great divorce. Thank you. Now I want to turn this over to Dr. Emily O'Gree.
So thank you to all of our expert speakers. I'm just going to briefly pull out a few points from the presentations that I thought really stood out to me. So I'm going to take my prerogative as the moderator to just reiterate a couple of points that I thought were significant, and then we'll turn over to a question and answer session with all of you. So the first in Dr. Jacobson's presentation, that baby boomers are not one big monolithic group. When we said, do you really know boomers? One of the things is we tend to think in popular culture of boomers as just being the old people. Whereas, and especially as a late boomer, I appreciate the distinction between the early ones and the late ones, that we see very different cohorts and very different behaviors. And we know that they are in different positions in society right now. The oldest boomers are just beginning retirement. The younger boomers are actually still in the labor force, still at the height of often their earning potential, and could potentially be working longer. The other thing that we see in terms of looking at the differentials and the variation within the boomers is that although in general older populations have been lifted out of poverty by Social Security and the social programs that we support in this country, that this disguises higher poverty rates and differential access to resources across the older population and across the boomers. And we don't always look at that and look at that variation. So I just want to point to those, as I think those are really significant aspects of taking apart these cohorts and not just thinking of them as one big group. In Dr. Bergman's presentation, she had a lot to say, and I told her I tried to synthesize some ideas, but one of the things that really stands out to me were a couple of points she made. One is to realize that labor force attachment and working declines well before the ages we think of as retirement. And that's something that's a really important trend to be thinking about, especially in terms of understanding the reasons why and what it is about those people or those jobs that are creating that trend. As she pointed out, you know, good jobs are ones that accommodate the needs of the population that is trying to work, that there are many people out there who want to work. Often they have disabilities that accompany aging or are due to injury or illnesses that limit the way they work, and we lack really effective workplace accommodations or cohesive accommodations that can actually support those and make a difference in people doing the work that they want to do when they want to do it for as long as they want to do it. So it's both jobs and work together. And then finally, in Dr. Lynn's presentation, I just wanted to point out one of the things about the baby boomers is that they started divorcing early, they keep divorcing, they keep remarrying. When we look historically at the whole life course of this generation, they were at the forefront in 1981 of the divorce revolution, and they decided that this was something they did well, and they were going to do it. So we see gray divorce very much, and I think Dr. Lynn pointed out, it seems to characterize this cohort. We're not sure if it's going to continue as other younger generations age. It does seem to be something that's really specific to the boomers, and it does affect their position. They enter old age with a really different family arrangement than we've seen in past older generations. More complex families, a lot with either not having lifelong partners, but maybe they have new partners, they're cohabiting, or they're in other romantic relationships. So that really kind of has meant a lot to think about in the way we think about long-term care, family caregiving, and all the things that go with thinking about the needs that they'll have later in life. So I just wanted, before we sort of break, I wanted to give a reminder again that every single one of these presentations draws on data that is brought to us courtesy of support from the federal government. Some of it is data that has been collected through standard collection through the Census Bureau, the decennial census, the American Community Survey, the current population survey, the estimates and projections that we see, the geographic distribution of the older population that Dr. Jacobson showed us. All of those come out. We also rely on the National Center for Health Statistics for our vital rates, for marriage and divorce rates that are counted nationally and at the state level, births and deaths. All of these are tallied up and made available so that we can actually do this research and give you these estimates, as well as you've heard more than once about the Health and Retirement Survey, which is supported by the National Institute on Aging of the National Institutes on Health. It's been ongoing since 1992, studying the older near and post-retirement population in the United States. It's a large omnibus survey that has provided with some of our best information about our aging populations over time. So, I did want to just mention one other thing before we break. We'll hand out a mic to give people opportunities to ask questions, which is about sort of the future health of the baby boom. Our speakers touched on this, but really we could spend an entire briefing talking about health and projections of the health of the population. One thing I do think is important to remember, as we saw, is that the baby boom is not at the ages yet where they're experiencing the most severe chronic conditions and disabilities or the most costly illnesses. In fact, in many cases, they are the generation taking care of those even older parents, aunts, etc., who are out there who are experiencing that. So we're really looking forward in time at what might happen in the future. And my position, we don't know how this cohort is going to age in terms of health. It's a complicated picture. Some things seem to be going up, some are down. And we have this problem, which is that the recent COVID-19 pandemic actually throws a wrench in anything we would think about the future, which is we don't know what the long-term consequences of the pandemic are going to be for how people age, how the experience of having had COVID intersects with other diseases and other viruses moving forward. We just don't know how it might affect, in particular, aging cohorts. And that's going to take us some time to understand. So I just wanted to sort of mention that. But regardless of what happens, we know that the size of the baby boom means that as they age in the future, there will be more people who are in need of assistance, who rely upon family care, who are looking for ways that they can independently deal with some of their long-term care needs. And so it is something that we are going to be grappling with as we move forward. So with that, I just want to say I think we should turn off the recording that we've been doing so we can just talk to each other now. And we're also going to ask you to, you can raise your hand, we have a microphone, if you could just take the mic, and then please give us your name, tell us where you're from, who you are, where you're from.